once again. In today's tutorial, we are going to look at some basic top 6 functions in Excel that must be known by anybody who wants to use Excel. Excel is still relevant in the system, and knowing these basic functions will help you to work faster. So what we see here is a sales data set, and we want to look at the following tasks. So the first task that we want to look at is sales per country. So how do we find the total sales per country from this data set? So you can see that we have different salespersons who made sales in different countries. So for example, we want to know the total sales that was made in the United Kingdom. And to do that, we can use the sum if function. So sum if function is a conditional state function that sums based on a condition. So based on a country, we want to find the total sales that was done in that country. So we have the criteria and the value. So under value, we will type equal to sign, then sum if, then into brackets. So sum if takes 3 parameters. So the range, the criteria, and the sum range. So the ranges, we are looking for sales per country. So the range will be country. So sum if into brackets, I'll click on the first country, click on shift control then down arrow to select all the countries, followed by a comma. Then the criteria. So the criteria is based on a country that we select. So the criteria will be under this criteria. So I'll click in this cell after the comma, then followed by another comma, and the last parameter is the sum range. So the sum range will be the amount. So I'll click on the first amount, shift control once again, then down arrow. So what shift control down arrow does is it selects all the records below the amount column. Then I'll just close the bracket and hit the enter key on the keyboard. So now we've inputted our sum if function, but then we've not provided the criteria. That's why we are still getting 0. So I'll just type the country here, UK, and after releasing my mouse, you see that it gives us the total sum of sales in the United Kingdom. So basically, this is how you can do a quick total sales that was done in the United Kingdom. So if I change this country to USA, you see that I'll have a different sales value. Or I can also create a list here by clicking in the cell, then going to data validation, then I'll select list from here, and I'll click in the source, then click on the first country, control shift down arrow again, then okay. So this will create a list of all the countries in the criteria field. So now I can have this drop down arrow. When I click on it, I'll get all the various countries listed here. So if I select a different country, we will get a total sum for the country. Okay, so I will do same for sum ifs. So sum ifs, so if with s means that you can do calculations based on multiple criteria or criterion. So now we are going to look at the sales of a salesperson in a certain country. So now we are providing 2 criteria or criterion for that. So I'll click in the values again, equal to, then sum ifs. So note the difference. With sum ifs, you have to add s to the if. So it also takes these parameters. So it takes the sum range. So the sum range is the amount that you are calculating, followed by the criteria range. So the criteria 1 range, then the criteria 1 and the criteria 2 range and criteria 2. So the sum range will be the amount. So I'll click in the amounts once again, shift control down arrow followed by comma, and the next option is the criteria. So the criteria, under criteria, I'll select the first box, which will be our criteria 1, then comma again, then I'll select no. The next thing that I need to select is the criteria range. So the criteria range will be the salespersons. So I'll click on the first salesperson, then shift control down arrow once again, then comma. Then now I'll select the first criteria, which is this box, followed by comma again. And the next thing to select is the criteria range 2, which will be the countries. So I'll click in the first country, shift control down arrow, comma once again, then I'll select the second criteria, which is this box, then enter. So now we have 0 again because we've not provided the criteria yet. So salesperson, I'll just click on this, make a copy, Control C, come here and paste it, Control V. Then I'll click in the second criteria, which will be the countries, go to data validation, then select list once again, click in the source, then I'll click on the first country, shift control down arrow. So this will create a list of all the countries for us. So now I can just select, okay, no, the first one is a mistake, let me correct it. So here we need the salesperson. So I'll go back to data validation, then in the source, I'll delete all that we have here, then select the first salesperson, shift control down arrow, then okay. So this will give us a list of all the salesperson. So now I can select, let's say, this salesperson, then the country that we want to find their total sales, so UK. So this gives us the total sales of this person in the United Kingdom. I can change the salesperson to another salesperson, then the country will be, let's say, New Zealand. So this gives us the total sales of this guy in New Zealand. So the sum ifs can let us choose based on multiple criteria. So it can be 2 or more criteria. Okay. So the next function is average if. So average if and sum if is the same, but the only difference is this time we are finding the average sales. So I'll make a copy of this once again, copy, then paste it here. So this is one of the good things about Excel. After creating a function, you can just copy it and paste it. Then here too, I'll provide equal to average if into brackets. So it also takes the range, criteria, and average range. So the range will be countries, because that is where we want to calculate the average sales. So control shift once again down arrow followed by comma, then we want the criteria. So the criteria will be countries. I'll just click on the country cell under criteria, then comma once again, then the average range. So we will be calculating the average under the amount column. So I'll click on the first amount, control shift down arrow, then enter. So this will give us the average sales in New Zealand. Okay, let me reduce the decimal places to just 2 decimal places. Okay, so now whatever country that I select here, you get the average sales in that country. So in the US, there's our average sales. In Australia, this is our average sales. Then in Canada too, this is our average sales. Okay, so we will now do for average ifs. So ifs with S means based on multiple criteria. So I'll select these two, copy, then paste them here because I want to have the same list of salespersons and countries. Then in the under values, I'll type equal to average ifs into brackets. It takes the same parameters as the sum ifs. So the average range. So the average range is the amount, shift control down arrow, comma, followed by the first criteria range. So in programming, when we say range, it means a series of values on or text, that is an array. Okay, so the first criteria range is the salesperson. So first salesperson, control shift down arrow, followed by the first criteria, which is salesperson. So under criteria, I'll click on salesperson, comma, once again. Then I'll look for range 2, which is the country. So shift control down arrow after selecting the first country, comma, once again, and the range. So no, the criteria. So the criteria is language. All right, so now we have, let me reduce the decimal places to 2, then add comma to it. So now we have the average sales of this guy in New Zealand. We can check for his average sales in Canada. So there is the average sales of this guy in Canada. In the United States, there is the average sales. We can choose different salespersons to know their average sales in different countries. Okay, so now let's talk about minimum ifs. So minimum ifs also gives the minimum sales per salesperson. So I'll just make a copy of this, and country. So minimum ifs also allows us to calculate the minimum sales of a salesperson and a country. That's based on 2 or more criteria. So under value, I'll type equal to MINIFS into brackets. So the minimum range, that will be the amount, shift control down arrow, followed by the criteria range. So the criteria range, the first criteria range or criteria range 1 will be salespersons, down arrow, comma, followed by the criteria itself. So under minimum ifs criteria, I'll choose the first one, then comma. Then the second criteria range is country. So I'll click on the first country, control shift down arrow, comma, once again, and I will choose the criteria, which is USA, then enter. Very simple. So now this is the minimum sales of this guy in the United States. Let's check from different countries. Okay, from Canada, let's check a different salesperson. Okay, so the next or the last function that we'll talk about is max ifs. So max ifs, I'll just make a copy of this and put it here. We don't need to repeat them because we need the same information. Then what I'll do is I'll just make a copy of this, put it here, then change from minimum to maximum. So I'll click on the function under value, then come into the function bar, then change from minimum to maximum because the parameters are the same. Okay, so now this guy didn't have any maximum sales in Canada, or they didn't do any sales in Canada. Let me select this guy, India. Okay, you let me type it direct, or let me type it rather than making copy and paste. So max ifs, all right, into brackets. So the first criteria range is salespersons, shift control down arrow, followed by, no, the first parameter is the sales. We need the sales column, so I'll click on the first sales amount, control shift down arrow, then followed by the first criteria range, which is the salesperson field, then followed by the range itself. So the range is here, comma once again, then the second criteria range, which is countries, comma once again, then followed by the criteria which we will be selecting. So here, okay, enter. Right, so now this is the maximum sales of this guy in India. Let's check in another country. So New Zealand, this is their maximum sales. We can check for different salespersons. Okay, so basically these are some Excel functions that can help you to analyze your data quickly. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.